Unrest in Venezuela seems to be worsening after an attack on a military base over the weekend.
In an apparent attempt at an uprising, dozens of locals took to the streets chanting freedom as they tried to infiltrate the base in Valencia. Military troops were quickly able to put down the attack. Patricia Mzee joins us now. She's a political writer at the Miami Herald. Patricia, give us some sense, some context here. We've seen violent protests going on in Venezuela over the last 4 months. The primary conflict right now is about what?
Well, the Venezuelan government pushed this new superpower legislature that was elected in a vote that is now widely seen as being fraudulent. And when the new assembly was inaugurated on Friday, its first move was to dismiss the independent prosecutor investigating the government. So the international community, the U.S., the Venezuelan opposition, they've all condemned this legislative body. They say it's not the rightful legislature of the state, and that has led to this just unspooling of democracy and this ongoing political crisis in the country.
We know, Patricia, Venezuela's economy is completely crippled at this point. The military is really the only thing right now keeping Maduro in power. If that collapses, what happens next?
Well, there's always the specter of a coup, a military takeover of the state. Now, the insurgents who planned this uprising on Sunday said that that's not what they were trying to do. They were simply trying to restore the democratic order. And even though the government said that they quelled this apparent incident, there's a manhunt underway. At least some of the men got away, and they got away with a cache of weapons that they stole from this military base. We don't know where they are, and that is kind of this lingering question, really, which is what control does the government really have over the military right now? And we don't know from the outside looking in if this could lead to further unrest.
It seems like Maduro has put members of the military into greater power, promoting people to generals. So he has control in that upper level of the military. But then, as you're talking about, those that are sort of removed from it may sort of be at a different standpoint, that they don't feel sort of that pressure from Maduro. So how does he maintain his power?
Well, the assumption is that he has been helping keep happy the top-ranked members of the military, the generals and such, through, whatever benefits the government can bestow, because it is a government that manages the economy. They have the money that they can hand out to the supporters, and that's what they did when oil prices were high and things were good in the country. But ever since oil prices have plummeted, and there have been food shortages, rampant violence, and medicine shortages in the country, the circle of people who have been able to benefit from the money that the government has left is smaller and smaller, and presumably still includes that inner military circle.
You were born and raised in Caracas. I'm curious what your take is on all of this. This is a country with a history of attempted coups. What stands out to you most about this particular crisis and this moment?
Well, it's always difficult to see your home country just kind of devolve into this crisis that now the eyes of the international community are on it. And from Miami, which is where I report, we have been paying attention to this crisis for a long time because we have so many Venezuelans like myself who came to this country in the past, decade and a half, but the rest of the world is finally paying attention, and I think that's been very surprising for the Trump administration, which has been imposing sanctions on Venezuelan officials, that they've gotten this widespread support from Latin America and Europe, and I think they're trying to channel it to see if they can use that pressure to restore what they consider the democratic order in the country to be.
We've seen also protests and clashes throughout South America. Is there broader significance to the anti-government anger in Venezuela?
I think it's pretty limited to the Venezuelan situation, which has really been happening over the past few years. It's not like this is just a crisis that happened overnight. Like you mentioned, the protests there have been going on for 4 months. Today there is an emergency meeting of foreign ministers from the region. I believe it's 13 countries from Latin America and the Caribbean and Canada all meeting in Peru to trying to figure out a unified response. So they might see it as something that could potentially affect their own countries if more Venezuelans flee and some of this unrest starts to spread.
You talk about them fleeing. There were recently officials in Miami-Dade who are asking for President Trump to take these Venezuelan folks in as refugees. Do you see that happening? Do you see the president being receptive to that? And where do you see that going as far as these leaders pushing for it down there?
we have not heard of any immigration actions imminent on the part of the U.S. This was really a symbolic vote taken by the local government. Miami, South Florida in general, is home to the largest community of Venezuelans outside of Venezuela. I mean, this is a 3-hour flight away from Caracas. And so this was really more a symbolic vote in solidarity. But the White House and Washington have not made any moves to change immigration policy towards Venezuelans at this point.
Yeah, I'm so surprised also hearing from folks in Florida, from Orlando, down south, just how influential South Americans are when it comes to the economy and having them travel, because it's just such a short plane ride, the impact that it's also having on the tourism industry and retail industry in Florida as well. Patricia, we want to thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.